2nd February 1970, power, stability, and the making of a modern Kenya. On 2nd of February 1970, Kenya stood at a crossroads. Barely 7 years after independence, the country was still young, hopeful, and uncertain. On this day, President Jomo Kenyatta was inaugurated for another term in office. To many, it symbolized stability, but to others, it marked the quiet tightening of power. Today, we ask 4 important questions. What did re-election mean in Young Republic? How was power consolidated in the 1970s? What were the achievements and the costs? And finally, what lesson does this era offer Kenya under the 2010 Constitution? In established democracies, re-election is usually a contest, but in young republics, it is often a confirmation. In 1970, Kenya's re-election of President Kenyatta was not driven by competitive politics, but by a national desire for continuity. Institutions were still fragile, political opposition had been weakened, and the memory of colonial rule was still fresh. Stability mattered more than pluralism. After the banning of the KPU, Kenya People's Union, in 1969, Kenya effectively became a one-party state in practice, even if not yet in law. The election therefore meant this: the nation chose familiarity over uncertainty, order over debate, security over experimentation. Re-election in this context was less about choice and more about reassurance. The 1970s marked a decisive shift in how power operated in Kenya. Authority became increasingly concentrated around the presidency. This consolidation took several forms. First, political dominance. KANU was the only viable political party. Opposition was not simply unpopular, it was unsafe. Second, control of parliament. Members of parliament relied heavily on presidential favor, and dissent often meant political isolation or even worse. Third, provincial administration. Provincial commissioners, district officers, and chiefs answered directly to the executive, giving the president reach into everyday life. And finally, detention without trial. This was used sparingly but effectively to silence critics, journalists, and activists. The 1969 Constitution made this possible. It created a strong executive but weak restraint. Power was not seized violently, it was centralized legally. To understand this period honestly, we must acknowledge both progress and pain. The Kenyatta era delivered real achievements. Education expanded, infrastructure grew, agriculture stabilized the economy, and Kenya gained international respect as a stable African state. For many citizens, life improved. But this development came at a cost. Political dissent was discouraged, critical voices were silenced, freedom of expression limited, and ethnic favoritism shaped access to power and resources. Kenya achieved growth, but without deep democratic participation. Stability was preserved, but accountability was postponed. The journey from the 1969 Constitution to the 2010 Constitution is not accidental. It is corrective. The 1969 Constitution placed enormous power in the presidency. Checks and balances were weak. The Bill of Rights was limited. The judiciary lacked independence. Over time, Kenyans learned a hard lesson. Power without restraint eventually turns against the people. The 2010 Constitution responded directly to this history. It introduced separation of powers, a strong and enforceable Bill of Rights, devolution, independent institutions, and public participation. Kenya did not reject its past, it studied it. On 2nd of February 1970, Kenya chose stability in a fragile moment. That choice shaped decades of governance, both positively and painfully. Today, under the 2010 Constitution, the lesson is clear. Leadership matters, but institutions matter more. Stability is important, but accountability is essential. History does not exist to glorify power. It exists to teach restraint. I am Samuel Lunani, and this is History Today. Thank you for listening. Please feel free to subscribe, share, like, and comment.